I wasn't actually that impressed with the first Black Phone, so I went into this one with fairly low expectations. And those low expectations were easily surpassed. This is actually pretty good. Once again directed by Scott Derrickson, The Black Phone 2 takes place a few years after the original. Mason Thames returns, riding high after the year he's had with How to Train Your Dragon as Finny or Finn. He's trying to go on with his life, but he is understandably dealing with some PTSD after the events of the first movie. He's getting into fights at school. He's self-medicating with the kind of things that teenagers might smoke. His sister Gwen, once again played by Madeline McGraw, seems to be having a better time of things. That is until she starts having dreams / premonitions / postmonitions that eventually lead Finn, Gwen and their friend Ernest, played by Miguel Mora, to Camp Alpine Lake, where, wouldn't you know it, some kids were murdered back in the day. They're connected to Ethan Hawke's The Grabber and also potentially connected to some other people as well. That more or less sets up the plot of The Black Phone 2. The best thing that The Black Phone 2 has going for it is that it's not just another standard remake style horror sequel. They actually try to do something different with this movie and they succeed. There's a couple of really intense scare sequences. I'm not one to usually get caught out by jump scares, but there's two in this that totally got me, jump scare wise. The look of the film is great. Cinematographer Par M. Ekberg, apologies if I'm butchering the pronunciation of that name. They're listed as the cinematographer on IMDb, and looking at their credits, it's mainly just music videos and concert films that they've worked on. So kudos to them, because the look of the film, as I said, is really great. The way the film goes from the dream sequences back to reality and vice versa is really quite clever. Really simple but clever and effective. Like, it goes from like old-timey, like Super 8 cine film, and it kind of like seamlessly morphs into like real world modern day cinematic digital or cinema film. I don't know if it was shot on film or digital. I'm assuming digital. The transitions from dream sequences to real world and back again is very, very effective. Ethan Hawke is back as the Grabber, although I'm not sure how much of this film is actually him in person on set and how much of it is him as a voice role with a stunt double or a stand-in. But either way, it's a good performance, even if it is just the voice role. He's definitely, I think the Grabber has, much like Art the Clown, I think in modern day horror, the Grabber has definitely cemented himself as a good character. I saw a good few people cosplaying as the Grabber over the past few years, so it's definitely struck a nerve with, you know, the modern day horror fan. Mason Thames as Finn does a decent job again. Damien Bashir also is a standout as a supporting role. He's kind of like the camp caretaker or counsellor type person. But the MVP of this movie is actually Madeline McGraw as Gwen. Even though she was in the first movie, her character takes much more of a leading role, or a co-leading role in this movie, and she actually shoulders a lot of the heavy lifting, both with the scary element but also with the emotional element. There's a scene with her towards the end of the movie that like kind of comes out of nowhere and kind of hits you in the feels, surprisingly. So I was not expecting to be almost rolling a tear in The Black Phone 2, but I was almost rolling tears in The Black Phone 2. For you gorehounds out there, fear not, this is a pretty gory movie. More so than the first one, I would say. It's definitely an 18 rated movie. 18 here in the UK, I'm assuming it's R rated in America. It actually owes a little bit of a debt to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, I would say, without going into too much spoilers as to why that is. Once you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, because, yeah, there's definitely Elm Street vibes there, and I don't think they're trying to like rip it off or anything. I think it's more of a tip of the hat and a little bit of an homage to the rules and the environment of the Elm Street movies. I'll leave it there because I don't want to get too much into spoilers. But as I said, it's not a cheap sequel style remake of a horror movie. Whereas the first one was about, you know, the kidnapping and the supernatural element with the phone, this one still has elements of that, but it's more of a cabin in the woods style movie. And again, as I said, this isn't a bad thing. The fact that they didn't just make it a typical remake style sequel is the best thing this movie has. Is the best thing going for this movie. Going to go with a 7 out of 10 for The Black Phone 2. If you liked the first one, I think you'll definitely like this one. And if, like me, you actually weren't that impressed with the first one, this one is actually better, in my humble opinion. That's us, folks. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.